listening, and you may be seated. As you're seated, let me remind you of the prayer page. And for sake of time tonight, I'll ask you to take that home, but look at those that are bold. Be in prayer for Brother Pencil, and continue to be in prayer for he and his wife. I got a text from Cary Grant that Josh's health just isn't the best right now, and doctors can't really figure out what it is and pinpoint it, so be in prayer for the Grants. And then there's many others. Our missionary of the week is Elias Correa and his family, and so if you would read that letter and then correspond with him. Let's take our Bibles, if you would, and let's turn over to Proverbs chapter 11, verse number 14. And we'll go through as we continue the third week here of making it through the quitting places. I pray you'll encourage your teens to be a part of this. We've been talking now for several weeks how we can begin and continue to train our teenagers to have a heart for ministry. And what better way than to one day see this church as it's growing and thriving there in Annapolis, and a teenager can look back and say, I remember we supported them through the Calvary Baptist Church. And so, Brother and Mrs. Beard, we're excited for that. Our church is supporting you, and so we're thrilled to be a part of your ministry. Proverbs chapter 11, verse number 14, it says, where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is what? Say it with me. Safety. You know, one thing I have learned through pastoring is not many people like counseling until they're in a lot of trouble. Not many people like counseling until they're in a lot of trouble. And then all of a sudden the counseling they want is, how do I get out of the trouble? And here's my answer: you probably should have come to me before you got there. And the greatest form of counseling that most will ever receive is through the preaching of God's Word. So be here. Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I promise you it'll help you. Look at Proverbs 24 and verse number 6. Proverbs 24 and verse number 6. It says, for by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in multitude of counselors there is what? Safety. There it is again. For the second time, God says in the multitude of counselors, there's safety. I want to talk to you on this subject, making it through the quitting places, and how are you going to do that? Each week we've answered it, and tonight's is by making sure you are listening to spiritual people who have made it through difficult times. Make sure that you're listening to what kind of people? Spiritual. That's the key. If you walk out tonight and say, all right, I'll just ask 10 people before I make every decision, you missed it. Your cabinet of counselors needs to be spiritual people. By the way, if you go to a church, on your cabinet of counselors ought to be your pastor. On your cabinet of counselors ought to be one of our deacons. On our cabinet of counselors, it behoove you to have one of our staff men probably. It would also behoove you to have one of our laymen. And I look out right now and I can see some men here that I even go to counsel. And I ask them their advice on situations. And over the past 9 years of my ministry, I have pastors that I talk to and I seek counsel from. Pastors who have pastored 35 years. One pastor who's pastored almost 50 years. Another pastor who's pastored 20. These are spiritual men. They have longevity in their ministry. And I enjoy listening to them. Are you always going to agree with your counselors? Probably not. But if you're going to go to them, here's the thing to listen for. When a majority of them says the same thing. When a majority of them says, if you have a cabinet of counselors of which I have 5, and if I have 4 that say the same thing, and I choose to do my own thing, I'm probably going to find a lot of heartache soon. But what I have found that if I have 5 counselors, from time to time, 4 will have the same opinion, and the 5th doesn't necessarily have a different opinion. He just has a different viewpoint on it, and I will follow those 4. You know what I've always found? What's the word? Safety. Safety. And there's been times where I said, Lord, I'll pray on it and pray on it, But there have been times I've made it through those difficult times because I would listen to spiritual people who have made it through difficult times. Look here, number 1 on our notes. Everyone who has ever went through some difficult times have found comfort from those who have been through the same difficult times but are now on the victory side. Are you listening? Everyone who has ever went through some difficult times have found comfort from those who have been through the same difficulties but are now on the victory side. There is no greater joy than I have than when a cancer patient comes up to me and says, let me just tell you what God's taken me through, and they begin to tell me and I begin to rejoice with them. Why? They've been through some difficult times and I've been through some of those very same difficult times, and together we can rejoice. Why? Because God did not abandon us. There have been those of you that have struggled. Maybe you've had hardship in a marriage and you've made it through those difficult times, and you will find yourself, as you are seeking counsel from others who maybe have had struggles in their marriage but have made it, you will find yourself rejoicing with them. Why? Because they saw victory and they're giving you hope that you can have victory too. There is no greater joy as we go through a valley than to hear that somebody else understands exactly how I feel. It's one thing when somebody says, well, I don't really know what you're going through, but let me give your advice. And it's just kind of a, all right. But when somebody says, oh, I've been there, it's like, really? How did you make it? Oh, well, this is all I know to tell you. Can I say those who have made it through the difficult times aren't very eager to brag on themselves. They're not eager to sit there and walk around and saying, hey, if anybody needs help in your marriage, come over here and see me. I can tell you a thing or two. No, the ones that have had struggles, maybe with child rearing, maybe they've had a child wander and they've learned some things and they've prayed that child back to Christ. Those parents aren't the ones running around like they're know-it-alls. But many times I'll call them and say, hey, I got a family going through a very, very similar situation. Could I send them to you? Sure thing. I said, just help them. And I can't tell you how many times some of you have helped some of those that sit right here in the auditorium just because you've been through it too. And we look, and everyone who is going through who's ever went through the difficult times have found comfort from those who have been through the same difficulties, but now you see them on the victory side. Next, we must also remember that victory is only found on the other side of a battle. And let that always be remembered. If you're looking for victory, it's because you're probably in the midst of a battle right now. This isn't the time to quit. Could you imagine if our soldiers all got deployed to Iraq and all of a sudden one day they all just sat down somewhere and said, we're done? No, you don't do that. Could you imagine in the days of old armies were charging at armies and they had their swords and some were in chariots, some on horses, and the battle was just about to get heated up, and in the heat of the battle, a whole group of them just said, we're done, and they just turned around and left all of their comrades in arms right there in the heat of it. We don't do those things. So why is it any different for the battles we face spiritually? Why are some of us in the heat of the battle just saying, you know what, I'm done, and we wave the white flag of surrender like we can walk away from it? Can I tell you, nobody's ever walked away from a battle without regret. And some who have walked away in the midst of a battle and you didn't make it through the quitting place, when you came to your right mind again, whether it was several months or years later, and you were ready to pick that sword back up and put it back in your hand and fight for the cause of Christ, guess where you started? Right where you left off. It's right there. The Christian life, if anybody's ever told you it's just a bed of roses, it's just going to be easy, well, they sold you a bill of goods. It's not true, and you've never heard this pastor say that. Why? Life's not going to be easy. Life has its challenges around every turn, around every corner. It just seems like they just keep coming and coming, and they come the most when we're at our weak point. Next, You cannot have a mountaintop without having two valleys on either side. You're looking for a mountain? You say, I just wish I could get to the mountaintop. Well, number one, realize that most of your spiritual life is going to be in the valley. The mountaintop experiences, they're few and far between. They do come, but they're simply moments of refreshment, moments to give me a different perspective, and I just keep going in the same direction. And if I keep going in that same direction, I'm going to find myself in a valley again. You'll never find true growth on a mountaintop. True growth comes in a valley. Mountaintop, the air's thinner, it's harder to breathe. And some of you, if you're camped out on a mountaintop, be careful. It won't be long before the wind just blows you right off. And there you find yourself in a valley again. It's life. It's life. I've got neighbors that live around me, and I can't tell you how many times that somebody will stop me, and I'll be outside with my kids, or we'll be pulling up, and somebody will just come up and say, Pastor, can I talk to you? And I've stood outside of my house sometimes into the early evening, and I've tried to listen to their problem and to their concern. And the only thing I could tell every neighbor I have is, make sure you know Christ. And I know of 3 around us that I've had opportunity to lead to Christ because they came to me at my driveway and said, we heard you're a pastor. They said, could we talk to you? One lady right now, if she ever has a problem, she drives a little gray car on our street. I remember the first time she came, she said, could I talk to you? I said, sure. She says, your wife going to think something's up? You know, you're talking to a lady outside? I said, I doubt it, and if she does, she'll come running. And we stood outside there under that light pole, and she just began talking to me about some issues. And I looked at her, and I called her by name, and I said, do you know Christ? She said, I don't even know what that means. I said, I didn't think so. And I went through the gospel with her, and some 45 minutes went by, and before I left and she parted, she bowed her head and asked Jesus Christ to save her. She's never come, but she's come to our door. When she heard I was sick, she came to our door and said, I heard Pastor was sick. Would you let him know I'm praying for him? My wife didn't say, what? Never been in church? God's not hearing your prayers. Sometimes we just don't think. My wife said, thank you. I'll let him know. There have been times I've been outside, maybe with the kids, or we were coming home from something, and she'll be pulling away, and she'll pull off to the side, and she'll say, Pastor, can I ask you a quick question? I'll say, sure. And she'll ask me a question about a heartache that she's experiencing. And I always tell her, do you know Christ? Oh, yes. I remember I asked Jesus in my heart right there. And I'll say, you know, here's some things I would do. And then before she leaves, I'll say, you need to come visit our church. I said, this drive-by pastoring thing just doesn't work well for me. And we'll laugh together, and she'll smile, but she's fine. And you know how it all started? Because we had a garage sale. And my wife had a little rack thing that she was selling, and she came over and bought it. And guess who got to carry it? And I made my way over, and I sat it outside of her front door, and that opened up a relationship with a neighbor. But you know, we've got to understand that there's going to be valleys. You know, some of my greatest times in life, some of my wife's and my greatest times in marriage have come during the valleys. They haven't all come on the high points, on the mountaintops. Valleys come. In Romans 8:6, would you turn there quickly? In Romans 8:6, as soon as I get there, now I'm turning with you, but as soon as I get there, I'm running. Is that all right? In Romans 8:6, it says, for to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. In Romans 8:6, we find that it is very important to be spiritually minded, because if I'm carnally minded, it is death to me spiritually, and I don't want to think through spiritual things with a carnal mind. And yet some do. Some who are saved find themselves in that valley, and we go through a dearth where we're not walking with God. We used to go soul winning. We're not going soul winning anymore. We used to be faithful to so many different avenues in the areas of God, and we're not anymore. And your mind is probably becoming carnal, and that may be why things are going on in your life that you don't understand. And you may be facing things and feel like you're spiritually anemic or you're in a drought spiritually, and you say, I just don't know what to do. Go back to His Word. Get back to the point where you were feeling your spiritual healthiest. And say, I just got to get back to doing what I was doing, where God and I were just like this instead of feeling like you're like this. We've got to make sure that we understand the principles of God's Word are true. Next here, when I'm going through the quitting places of life, it is important that I go to those that are on top side spiritually so that they might help me judge or discern properly those things that I am facing. 1 Corinthians 2, if you turn over there, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, we find... which things also, starting in verse 13, which things also we speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teacheth, but which the Holy Ghost teacheth, comparing spiritual things with spiritual. But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. But he that is spiritual judgeth all things, yet he himself is judged of no man. For who hath known the mind of the Lord, that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of who? Christ. That's the mind I want. When I'm going through some troubles, when I'm going through some heartaches, when I'm going through those days, and I say, I just don't understand, I want to be able to tap into that spiritual mind that's been afforded to me, if I'll just claim it, the mind of Christ. What better mind to have than the mind of Christ? And can I say, Christ wasn't a quitter. Christ made it all the way to the cross, and by the way, onto the cross. By the way, into the grave, and then out of the grave. He made it all the way. And we look and we find when I'm going through the quitting places of life, it's important that I go to those that are on top side spiritually so that they might help me, quote unquote, judge. That's what that verse said. Judge or discern properly those things that I'm facing. But he that is spiritual judgeth all things. One thing I can't stand is when people walk around and say, stop judging me. That just means you have something to be judged about. We got folks, they say, well, you're Baptist, you're all judgmental. Well, hopefully they mean you're spiritual, because a spiritual man judgeth all things. You know, I judge, and I've said it over and over, I judge who my kids can and can't hang out with. Amen. I judge who my wife and I will and will not spend time with. I judge, and every day I'm put in a position of judgment. Not that I'm better than somebody else. This morning, God woke me up at 4 o'clock, and I went downstairs, and I didn't know what to do. I was wide awake. And I'm just sitting down there. And I thought, well, I could turn on the TV. And then God said, don't you have a Bible study to write? Yeah. And I opened the Bible, and I just began reading. And man, I started in Psalm 1, and I got to about Psalm 13, and I thought, this is good stuff. Started with, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he goes on and says, his tree shall be planted by the rivers of water, bringing forth his fruit in his season. Man, I thought this is good. And I began going all the way through there, and David's writing about all kinds of different stuff. 2 and 3 helped me this morning at about between 4 and 4:30. This is good. And I began thinking about what the lesson was going to be on tonight, and I began just going through just many different things that God has taught me over the last 12 years that I've been in full-time ministry. And I thought, Lord, every step of the way you've been there. Every step. Every step. I've Began to go all the way back into the beginning stages of my life, and I began to just rejoice in all that God has done to get us to this point right here where we live in the great city of Dundalk, Maryland, where, by the way, last night our choir did a great job singing, and it was announced to all that were in that park that we are the church of Dundalk. He didn't just say a church in Dundalk. He said, and I'd like to say that this is the church of Dundalk. I was all over that. I had a couple of folks even text, and I said, I'm glad they heard that too. I had a great time with our senior saints going around the harbor yesterday. That was a great time. Sometimes I'd rather be with the older folks. They're my speed right now. I have my wheelchair, Brother Hall pushing me up, trying to get me in there, Brother Brittingham and one of our new men, Wayne, and Brother Watt. Man, everybody's helping. We had a great time. Then comes the midnight hour.
Yes, sir. Amen.
And I sat down at home with my wife, kids were all in bed, and I turned on the History Channel to see what was there. Wasn't sure, maybe American Pickers was on, or Pawn Stars, or and they had a whole 9/11 account. My wife and I just sat there just so sobered, just watching all that these last 11 years have revealed. All the different recordings, all the tape recordings, everything, the videos, everything that was just compiled. And just amazed at the heroism of the men and women running in with all the other people running out.
Yes, sir.
The people in nearby houses that were closing their windows and air conditioning units being shut down just to protect them, and some just so frantic, thought for sure New York City was literally under attack and were afraid. They were asking, should we stay in our house? And they were miles away from ground zero. Nobody knew. I told my wife, I said I couldn't even imagine what it felt like being here on this coast, because I know how we felt on the West Coast. It'll be a day none of us ever forget. But do you know, during that trying day in America, do you know for that next Sunday, churches had never been so full? People immediately began to turn to God. Do you know the week after, churches had never been so sparse?
That's right.
My wife and I say it often to each other, we've just been so calloused by movies. It literally looked like a horror movie. It looked like a sci-fi movie. All that had happened. You know, if America can make it through the quitting places, the children of God can too. We can make it. But we've got to band together. We've got to be an encouragement to each other rather than a discouragement to each other. We've got to be a voice of help rather than a voice of suffering. We've got to be a voice that just kind of cries out, hey, you can make it, rather than a voice that says, oh, I don't know if you're going to make it. We need to make sure that we're spiritually minded. Next here, there are many tonight that have no thought of quitting on God, but maybe you're thinking about quitting on the things of God. Maybe soul winning. You say, I just don't have time. Maybe your faithfulness to church. Maybe you're thinking tonight you're ready to quit on a marriage. Maybe you're ready to quit tithing. Maybe you're ready to quit teaching a Sunday school class. Maybe you're thinking about quitting RUI, or you're thinking of quitting a bus route. And maybe you're thinking of quitting the church. Can I say to you, that is not the heart of God. All through the scriptures, you will never find that God quit. From Genesis 1:1 all the way to the last verse in Revelation, you will never find God quits. His people do, but our God does not. And so I say to you tonight, don't quit. Nobody next is exempt from going through difficult times. It is difficult times that make us depend on God more and strengthen us for the battles ahead. It's the difficult times that make us who we need to be for the most difficult battle that's to come in the years ahead in our life. I don't know what that is. For me, the most difficult battle may not be cancer. For me, the most difficult battle may not be this leg. The most difficult thing may come 20 years from now. Maybe it's going to come by way of heartache that one of my my children suffer with. Maybe it's going to be my wife struggling. I don't know. But I want to show God that I can depend on Him right now. If this is the most difficult thing that I ever struggle with, I pray that God finds me faithful. And if this is the most difficult thing that you struggle with, stay faithful. Because if you quit now, it's not going to get easier. Faith right now is awesome. Because for the last 12 years being in the ministry, 9 years being here, all we've done is faith. It's been faith since the moment I candidated at this church, and you know what? I've loved it. I've looked at staff recently, and I said, you know, God's going to continue to take our church through moments of faith because we've got a family in Africa right now that we're asking to live by faith. And if we're going to ask them to live by faith, guess what? God's going to ask us to live by faith. And God's going to put this church in a position to where we're going to have to live by faith. And we look next here, to quit on God is to say that He did not have what it takes to get you through that difficult time that you faced. Romans chapter 14, if you would jump back there, Romans chapter 14 and verse number 22 states, hast thou faith? Have it to thyself before God. Happy is he that condemneth not himself in that thing which he alloweth. And he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. For whatsoever is not of faith is sin. How's your faith? How's your faith? We live in such a time of doubting Thomases. I believe it when I see it. Now, around here, we believe it far before we ever see it. That's why the Kessels are there before we had all the money. That's why we keep running the buses, and we have more now. That's why the church, we keep going soul winning. Why? We just want to have faith. And we look, and we must continue to have faith. Otherwise, we're going to quit during the difficult times. And to quit during the difficult times is to say that God didn't have what it took to get you through it. And we know that's just not the case. To quit is not the easier path. 2 Timothy 2:3. In 2 Timothy 2:3, it says, thou therefore, and we've been teaching it to our students, that was our verse for the first month of school, thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Endure. Endure. To quit is not the easier path. As a matter of fact, to quit is the most regrettable. On the back, and we're going quickly, we're good on time, those who have stayed faithful to Christ and have made it through the quitting places are often more happy and humble than those who have quit on God. Often those who have quit on God, who I run into years later, boy, they just got an arrogance about them, and they've got every reason why they quit on God, and they begin to blame so-and-so or such and such. But those who didn't quit on God, they have such a happiness and a humility about them. And they'll say, no, I almost quit. But I'm so happy I didn't. I'm just so happy I didn't. Next there are those, there are times when the difficult time, let me make sure I read this right. There are times when the difficult times may be the chastening of God. This is not always the case for difficulties. But it is between the believer and God to determine. You can go and look at Job 5:17, and if you were to look there tonight, you would find that Job challenges us all to embrace the chastening hand of God. Because Job is telling us it makes us better. It makes us better. We may not like it, but hey, if you're going through something and you're being spanked by God, get it right. Because God doesn't want to spank you. It's kind of like your heart towards your children. You like disciplining your kids? A parent in their right mind does not. These parents who abuse their children by slapping them across the face and grabbing them so viciously and violently, I don't understand that mentality. Every time I look at my 3 children, every time I look at all the children in our Christian school, some 225 of them this year, I'm just so grateful they're here. So grateful that parents would entrust them to us just for a short part of their life. But children are to be loved of God, just like I'm loved of God. We look next. Sometimes the quitting place is brought on because the person involved has abandoned the basic principles of God's Word. Look at Proverbs chapter 3. We're jumping around here and we're going quick. Proverbs chapter 3. In Proverbs 3 in verse number 12, it says this, "For whom the Lord loveth, He correcteth, even as a father the son, in whom He delighteth." If you were to go to Hebrews 12:6, you don't have to right now, but it says, "Whom the Lord loveth, He chasteneth." He's talking about, man, God loves us that much that He will keep us on the straight and narrow if we'll let Him. He'll help us. Quitting places are not, God doesn't want us to quit. They're building times in our life. Next there we find, talking to those who have made it through far more difficult times than I am facing often encourages me. We said that at the beginning. There's many times that I'll speak with people, and lately it's been at the NIH for us. We'll sit there and, oh my goodness, you'll see kids coming through with their parents, and the kid's the one who's sick. We've met folks who've been taken in for their surgery and they've been returned within just about an hour, and to hear that there's no hope, there's nothing we could do, it's just too bad. I tell you, I'm sorry to say, there's others that are worse off than me, but they're still smiling. Those kids that go through that cancer hospital, they're all smiling. Mom and dads, they're not, I can't even imagine what their hearts are facing, but just the fact that kids are smiling encourages me. And we look and we often think we're the worst. The job of restoring one who is quitting during that quitting place in their life is given to the spiritual, not the one who thinks he or she is spiritual or just is trying to act like they are. If you were to go to Galatians 1:6, it says, "He that is spiritual, restore such an one." Talking about the one who's fallen. It's not given to the one who acts spiritual. It's not given to the one who just thinks they're spiritual. It's given to the one who is spiritual. And can I say, the spiritual people oftentimes aren't the ones running around saying they are. They're just not often, they're not the loudest of the group. They're often sitting back and their hearts are just breaking because somebody's hurt so bad. And when they're approached, if I can help, I'll help. The spiritual one. He that is spiritual, restore such an one. The safety, and we're almost done. Look, we're moving. The safety that can be found in seeking spiritual counsel is the fact that a spiritual man judgeth all things. And we already talked on that tonight. But there's safety in that, because a spiritual man is not just going to spout off. Spiritual man's going to judge and weigh the situation, and sometimes he's going to say, you know what, I don't know right now, but if you give me some time, I'll get back to you. A know-it-all doesn't make him spiritual. Sometimes the best thing somebody could say is, you know, I don't know, but if you'll give me some time, I'll try my best to find out for you, and if I can't, I'll get you with somebody who can. The spiritual, when you find yourself in the quitting place, remember, God promised to never abandon those that are saved. The last verse I'd like you to look at is Hebrews 13:5. Hebrews 13:5. In Hebrews 13 and verse 5, it says, "Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For He hath said, I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee." Can I tell you, if you can't depend on the promise of God, there's not a promise you can depend on. He promised never to leave me nor forsake me. Our heads are bowed. Our eyes are closed. I ask you tonight, where are you at in life? Maybe you're on a mountaintop. All right, get ready. The only reason it's a mountaintop is because there's a valley on either side. Maybe you say tonight, I'm in the heart of a quitting place. Then why don't you come down and let God just continue to work on your heart and show Him that you're willing to surrender to whatever it is He wants. Maybe you're here tonight and you're not saved. You say, Pastor, if I died tonight, I don't know for sure that I'd go to heaven. If I died tonight, I don't know for sure that I'd go to heaven. But I'd ask that you pray for me. Pastor, would you pray for me? Because that's something I really would like to know. Is there anybody like that tonight? Nobody's looking. You just slip your hand up. Anybody at all? Say, Pastor, pray for me. I don't know for sure that I'd go to heaven, but I would like to know. Anybody like that? By our testimony, we're all saved. How about it, folks? I don't know where you're at in life. Maybe God's just working on your heart in a total different area. That's the power of the Spirit. He knows exactly what you need. Tonight, I'm going to pray. Some have already come. Would you join us here at the altar for just a moment? Father, we love you. Thank you for the opportunity to be in church tonight. Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful DVD presentation. Thank you for the Beards. Bless their ministry. Lord, during this invitation, I pray that you'd work in our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. As we stand together, nobody's looking. Would you come and maybe just bow your knee to God and just say, God, here I am. I'm on a mountaintop tonight, but I want to tell you, if you take me through a difficult time, I'm going to just stick with you. Maybe you're not on a mountaintop. Maybe you need to come to God and say, God, I want to trust you through this difficult time in my life. I don't know your situation, but I can read faces. I can see countenances and stature. Where are you at tonight? Let's just take a moment and let God work. Father, we thank you for what you've done in so many hearts tonight, those who've come to the altar, those who've prayed right there at their seat. Lord, I thank you for our church. Lord, I thank you for what you're doing, what you're allowing us to be a part of. I pray that we'd never put our eyes on man, that they'd be forever on God. For with man, this would be impossible. But with God, you've just showed it's possible. And we love you. I pray that you'd bless this love offering that we're about to take as the ushers are coming. I pray that you'd help us to give. Brother Beard is working a full-time job right now. Lord, has just a heart to get there to Annapolis, and I pray that you'd help him to be able to book the meetings needed. I thank you for our teenagers who are going to raise that money each month, that we could just be a part, a small part of what he needs to get he and his family there to Annapolis. What a needy city it is. And Lord, I pray that you would bless this love offering. In Jesus' name, amen. Be seated quickly and then we'll be dismissed.